We're at, if you don't mind.
Okay, it's 9 o'clock and we'll call the meeting to order. Can we please get a roll call?
Yes. Ms. Cordova, Chair.
Here.
Rustin Silk.
Here.
Co-chair.
Sorry, here.
Mike Miller.
He is absent. He called and said he is in Arizona.
All right. Good. Mike Rafford.
Here.
Chris Wood
Here.
and Doug Stone.
Here.
All right.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all for your attendance. Item 3, action items. Consideration and continued work and action, review and discussion on resolution number 22-23-24 enterprise fund rates and billing. The city manager and the finance director must inform the committee on the current and past rates and status since the inception of the resolution being created, which was 22-23-24. Mr. Minton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we can move to, yeah, that's a great question. So, let's go with not the mayor's slide deck, but with my slide deck that I sent you this morning. Sorry, we've been doing a lot of work on this stuff, so there's a lot of data in here, and I can't see the things very well. So let's go with, can you see where I am? So Finance Committee, City Council. Yeah, that one.
Yes.
All right, thanks. We're going to pick up where we left off approximately a week ago or so. So last time we talked, we identified what we saw as a problem. And then our promise to you by reconvening this was to dig into that problem and take a look at where we thought we were and where we think we're going and kind of how we got there. And that's what this is all about. Unfortunately, I'm kind of in between reading glass range and not reading glass range. So you see the title here. Let's go to the next slide. The smaller bullets. This is no kidding, 100% vetted, legally reviewed as far as doing legal research at our level, but no kidding. So 2022, you know that it was voted into resolution. A multi-year rate plan was lawfully approved by council. Only the first year the scheduled increases were implemented and subsequent years were not executed. The result is that there's a utility revenue shortfall across the city. Fun fact, when I came on board or when I was interviewing, the city council elected officials had a list of questions and I was onboarded, and then they gave me a list of do-outs. And one of them was learn the budget. Well, as part of that due diligence and learning the budget, this is what I found out, amongst some other things, but probably the key thing that I found is the city's operating at a deficit, and a huge deficit, and a non-sustainable deficit. And there's no question about it. It's inarguable, and it's not going to fix itself. As a result, the issue that will go before council one way or the other is how to fix this lawfully and responsibly. No questions about it. Next slide. So up here it says name the problem correctly. That's not a do out on the slide. This is literally a task. Name the problem correctly, because the naming of the problem has ramifications with legal framework. And let's talk about what this is and what it isn't. This is not illegal billing. Moving forward, catching up is not illegal billing. Failing to comply with the resolution is not illegal as well. It's just a misstep. So this was not retroactive miscollection. So if we move forward and we legally have to recover monies that we didn't recover yet, and that's not illegal retroactive miscollection. It's not misappropriation of funds because we hadn't collected any funds and misappropriated them. What it is it's an implementation failure of a lawfully adopted rate resolution. So the resolution stands, the resolution is illegal. Catching up to the resolution is mandatory, And there's no laws broken here, but there was a mistake made. Somewhere, for some reason, doesn't matter, we just forgot to do it. Now, when I say we, it might sting, but nobody in this room was there or responsible for doing it. But the fact of the matter is, it didn't happen. Next slide. Some of the key legal principles under New Mexico law. I'm gonna get where I can see it, hopefully the mic can pick it up. So municipalities and municipal utilities rates are set by ordinance resolution. We did that. Once those are adopted, the rates remain valid until amended or repealed. Well, that never happened. So these rates are still in effect. Failure to execute later steps does not void the resolution. Just because we didn't do it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But it does create a revenue gap, but not a legal defect. So everything that was voted in stands, it's still there. Somewhere along the line, someone just didn't do it, but doesn't mean it went away. Next slide. What the city can and should do right now. We need to acknowledge the execution failure and be transparent about it. Through several means, we need to bring this to light and say, we didn't do this. We a culpa, me a culpa, we a culpa, however you want to frame it. Then we need to adopt correct rates that apply only to future bills. Now, that doesn't mean you can't recover the money that you didn't recover. It means you can't go and put in the past and put punitive fees, late charges, things like that. The rates are the rates. The utilities that were used. We will have to go back and recover just that, but with no punitive measures and so on. But you have to do it going forward. So you have to add any non-recovered funds or gapped funds by going forward. We need to set the rates to reflect the actual cost of service. That's a no-brainer. That's what you do with utilities, etc. And then we need to close the documented revenue shortfall going forward. So that's kind of about what I talked about. You can't go in the past, you can recover those funds, you must recover those funds. Otherwise, you gave them away, a subsidy, etc. We're not allowed to do that. But you got to do everything going forward from this day forward. Next slide, please. What the city cannot do. These are absolute legal boundaries giving this kind of problem. The city cannot back bill customers for missed increases. Now, this can create an air of confusion. You're not back billing anybody. And you're not adding back bill fees or anything like that. You're just going forward, pulling back those gaps. You cannot impose catch-up charges labeled as past due, i.e. addendums, extra taxes, late charges, things like that. You cannot add penalties or interest for historically under, we can't pass on the interest or anything like that we would have been able to maybe do. We can't do that to anybody, and we wouldn't. And you can't rename stuff to make it sound better than it was. And then going forward, rates, utility rates or enterprise funds must be prospective only. That means you have to go into the future with it to recover what you didn't recover in the past. But you can't add additional fees, labels, names, taxes, anything like that to it. Does this make sense so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. Next slide. Why acting now is fully lawful. The city is not changing policy, it's correcting the execution. The resolution stands. When it was voted on, it's still a legal resolution. Those rates are the rates, non-negotiable. The council retains full rate setting authority. That's just how it works. When the budget moves forward and we put a budget into the council for approval, those rates should be adjusted in that budget, and then the council votes on it, and that stands. Those are the rates. That's the way it works. Going forward, prospective correction satisfies legal standards. This is across the board in New Mexico. If it costs X or Y to do business, you factor X or Y into your budget. This council votes on it, and that's it. That the council is, for all intents and purposes, the ruling body on that, and it stands. It's the law. And to delay action increases financial and infrastructure risk. Why? We'll see the numbers in a couple other. We have a lot of data to show you, but we'll see the numbers. We're basically operating at about a 53% funding capacity right now. So the city is expecting us, and rightfully so, to give 100% of effort, but we're operating on 53% funding. Put that in perspective. If we were all going on a vacation to Hawaii right now, we're just about to get on the plane, and the pilot said, "Hey, it's great. We've made this discount fare. Thank you for buying the thing and jumping on the airplane. But the discount fare was so discounted that we're going to put 53% of the fuel it takes to get to Hawaii. Enjoy your flight. We'll serve drinks in 10 minutes." We probably wouldn't get on that airplane because we make it run 53% to the big island before we ditched in the ocean, right? And that's kind of where we are with the city. We're operating on 53% funding. We're augmenting it with some other things, but every time we augment it with something else is dying. Okay, moving forward. Next slide. The whys. Service charge adjustments are the strongest tool. It applies equally. This is moving forward. This is fixing stuff moving forward. By adjusting the rates for services equitably across the board, it applies equal to everybody, and by volume. How much you use is how much you pay for. It protects conservation-based usage tiers that are built into the, particularly water, etc. It reduces claims of unfair discriminatory recovery because across the board, discriminatory recovery, across the board, everybody pays for what they use at the same rates. And it's a well-established practice for New Mexico municipalities. We're not the first community that did something like this. We're not the first community that skipped a rate period or something like that. There's other examples out there, and we've looked at some of those as well. But these are why these work. These are why they stand the legal, moral, and ethical test, if you will. Next slide. Later, we'll talk about an independent rate study, and there are some conceptions and misconceptions of what an independent rate study is. So we don't need one right now to enact the resolution. The resolution is already enacted. We just need to make that happen. But going forward, to make sure that we capture the right numbers and things like that, and this doesn't happen again, you'll see us recommend soon having an outside agency, not before we make this adjustment, but after the fact, going forward, to ensure we don't program gaps into our own finances in the future. We're going to end up recommending to the governing body that we have an independent rate study done on a regular basis so that we are billing the right number for the right services at the right time. This doesn't happen again. But an independent rate study and having one done is not an admission of any wrongdoing. It's not a reopening of past decisions. It validates the actual cost of services with all things considered, like tires, fuel, oil, labor, taxes, loan repayments,
Electricity.
ICIP, infrastructure capital improvement plans. Those are brought into independent rate studies, things you intend to do in the next 5 years, et cetera. All those are brought in, and it supports long-term stability and future councils. Now, this is important. Think about this. I have a city council who's responsible for this, but wasn't responsible for this. If these types of things were taken in consideration 5 and 10 and 15 years ago, this bottom line here, we actually would be talking about something different right now, right? So by taking these kind of actions, this supports long-term stability and future councils. We can't leave the people in the future with our problems that we don't act on. Next slide. So defensible plan going forward, acknowledge that we have a problem. Immediately adopt prospective recovery plan and courses of action that can get us there. When the monies are recovered, they go to the right place. Complete an independent rate study after we start doing some of these things so we can get it right in the future. And then maintain a clear and honest public communication about all these things going forward. That'll get us where we need to be. Next slide. Doing that approach holds up for several reasons, but in order, it doesn't charge any retroactive charges. It's a strong, legally defensible plan because we're above board on everything. It protects low usage customers because we're billing the right amount, and then they get what they pay. They pay for what they use going forward. It does preserve conservation goals. As you see, there's kind of a curve there. The more you use at certain thresholds on the billing rates that were put in place, the more you use, the more you pay at a certain threshold. If you want to pay that much, that's fine, but you carry a larger burden, which in essence preserves conservation efforts if those higher rates kind of stifle your utilization. And it meets the fiduciary and infrastructure obligations that are required by the city. And that's what I'm talking about. You need that 47% or that 40% back so we can do the right stuff at the right time and fix the things as well. Next slide. Recommended is we kind of start carrying these things to council. We acknowledge that a gap was created by not executing the rate increases. Saying the same things over and over, but I'm starting to close it. We basically say and acknowledge that we have a problem, a revenue gap, because we didn't incorporate the rates at the right time. The only real lawful remedy is prospective correction. You can't go back in time. You can't penalize people. You can't add extra fees for the past. You can only pay for those things moving forward. The plan restores stability without unfairness. You use what you use, you pay for what you use, and we adjust the rates to pay for that gap timeframe. And not acting costs more. Not acting costs more to the point where if we don't do something, it'll get drastic to the point where the city's insolvent and other people will come and fix our finances. Next slide. Cool. If you wouldn't mind, bring up the mayor's slide deck, please. The mayor is the 2026 water rates. Yeah, water slideshow.
Right, this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mayor, you want to take this one?
I can do that.
So we're going to cover some of the things we just covered right now, but we're going to add some numbers on this and percentage. I'll give you an idea of where we are with some of these things.
Can I ask a question real quick?
There's a question on the floor. Yes, sir.
Did I hear you say that the undercharged period of time, 3 years or whatever it was, cannot be recovered? We can only go forward making sure that the fees are charged to cover how much it costs to produce the water.
No,
Right?
no, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. But I understand how that could be misunderstood. So it is legal, moral, ethical, and actually you have to do it. So you're correct. We underbilled during that time frame. We have to recover those bills. It's not a desirement, it's a requirement. Because for all intents and purposes, if we don't recover it, we gave it away, which puts us in a different framework. Okay. What you're not allowed to do is go back and say, I'm going to penalize you for not paying. What you have to do is you have to recover those underpaid periods by adding those incrementally going forward to the bills going forward. Does that make sense?
And we're not gonna make it up in 1 month. If we were penalizing for what we missed, we'd say your next bill is $4,000
Yeah, that's the
to make up what didn't happen the last 2 years. We can't do that, so we have to do it over time.
So what is the response to people who say that because I'm going to be a present and future water customer of the city of Portales, I'm making up the difference for those people in the past that are no longer customers of the city of Portales?
Good point.
If you move here this month, you're paying for somebody else's. Right? I mean, that's what I
saying.
thought about last night. If I
People
moved here last month, I'm fixing to start paying for things before I even lived here.
Right.
But they were here's my argument to that. They were supposed to already be there. We were supposed to be paying that higher rate anyway.
Right. Passing along the recoupment. How do you pass that along to somebody who just started water service last month?
Well, if I understand it from the other day,
To recoup money that should have been billed to someone who is no longer a customer.
but if I understand correctly from what we went the other day, if we increase, say 40%, that it was going to be more than that anyway. So we're not adding any more than it should have been if we'd have followed the resolution. So the new person's not paying any more than they should have been paying if we had followed the resolution.
Well,
Now, I
So we're
think,
not increasing it to pay up the past. I don't know. It's
no, Chris has a great question. So what I'm gonna ask you to do on these kind of questions, I'm gonna ask people to write them down. Write them down. Let's continue to push through. And then when we as a body start to solve problems, we will start to look at those types of things. Now, that's a great question. And I would also pose that that is the very small percentage of people who possibly, and I'm not saying they are, that's the very small percentage of people who might be looking at a problem like this a little bit sideways. This doesn't apply to me. I didn't live there two years ago, type of thing. So that cannot stop the progress of getting the city financially back on track. It can be considered, but it cannot stop it. So we cannot hinge an argument that's keeping the city from going from solvency to insolvency on the 5 or 10 people that it might apply to. So I would say going forward, let's write those things down. As we start to solve problems, we will take a look at those types of line item, each things for consideration.
right, and that comment only applies to the recoupment of
100%.
previous billing. You know, I'm 100% fully in favor of raising rates to what they should be right now.
Yep.
But if we're gonna be increasing rates to recoup, that's something I think we
I'm
need to.
totally tracking what you're saying. Totally tracking what you're saying. I would argue that I'm one of those people, right?
yes, you are one of those people.
So, okay.
So, in speaking about this, you're going to hear me say some of the same things Mr. Mitten said. And you might even hear me say the same thing 2 or 3 times because this was approached from a little bit different angle. Mr. Mitten wanted me to find errors in his calculations. I started tearing apart his numbers with the intent of proving him wrong at his request. There were some discrepancies, but none of them materially changed the outcome. Most of them came down to the way he interpreted it versus myself or the methodology, but really not the intent. And in the end, the conclusions were the same. The city made a decision to reset. A new finance director was brought in with a clear directive, straighten this out. Council followed with a new city manager under that same expectation, fix this. And the citizens of Portales made their voices clear that they elected new leadership on the promise of solutions and a different path forward. And that is where we're at today. Assuming the responsibility left with us not to explain the problem away, but to face it directly. Before I'm going to go to this slide, this is a dynamic situation where we're along the way are finding this error or that error and correcting those errors. Primarily because we did have so many people leave. Some of this information is just buried. So one thing as a disclaimer before this slide that I want to acknowledge, on the 2023 rate sheet, the historical references show 2011 for sewer and trash and 2016 for water. All along been referencing 2010 since rates were increased, 2010. And in my understanding from Ms. Rice is that the 2016 adjustment was a utility bill adjustment, not necessarily a water rate adjustment. She's thinking that that had to do with the wastewater treatment plant fees, whereas the utility bill went up, but the water rate did not go up. That's a possibility. Additionally, on the 2011 rate changes indicated on the 2023 rate increase, those very well could have been passed in 2010 and implemented in 2011, which is why in some city council meetings, there are references to 2010 was the last time we increased rates. Those are worth clarifying, but actually they don't change the core issue to what we're dealing with today. In 2023, the city of Portales increased its water rates in the amount of water, 8%, sewer, 10%, Trash, 12%. Like I said, it was indicated the last water increase was 2016, trash in 2011. Inflation during that time was 2.8% per year. So compounded in that 15 years was a 51% increase.
Do we need the next slide? or-
No, I'm not going to
Okay,
the slide yet.
okay.
For references, in 2011, the minimum wage in New Mexico was $7.50 an hour. In 2026, it's $12 an hour, a 60% increase. We are not dealing with one problem here. We're dealing with three problems stacked on each other. The Portales water system is experiencing, in a sense, a triple whammy because of our revenue model. In 2011, the city billed 1.2 billion gallons. In 2023, the city billed 801 million gallons. So that's a decrease of 400 million gallons of billable water, 33% less water that we bill for. We're asking the citizens to consciously conserve water. Our revenue, our commodity is water. So we're in essence asking them to take less revenue, that for the city to take less revenue, in addition to aquifer declines, et cetera. So that the city now is operating on 2/3 less of its former volume. And it's very hard to find, and I want to throw this number out as a grain of salt. It's very hard to find a water rate prior to 2011, but the averages suggest that we were billing $3 per 1,000 gallons, whereas now we average about $3.75 per 1,000, and that's an average. That's a 20 to 25% increase. But those increases haven't been sufficient to offset our lost volume. Garbage trucked in was $100,000 less. Just a pickup truck for the parks everywhere else was about half the price that it is now. 25,000 then, more like 50,000 now. We're operating under 2026 cost conditions on a budget that is 10 to 15 years old. In 2011, we were billing approximately $300,000 a month. In 2023, we're billing $250,000 a month. So we're billing $50,000 less, or $600,000 a year, and those were 2011 dollars. So if we would have kept track, our revenue, if the 2011 volume still existed at today's rates, our revenue would be approximately $375,000 a month. So we are, the bottom line, we're facing a three-part challenge. We have less water to sell, rates have not kept pace, we have significantly higher cost, and that is why our system is under pressure. We can't control the volume. Cost will not decrease. The only adjustable factor we have is how water is priced moving forward. And honestly, we've got to start preparing for imported water, whether it be the Ute project, another source, RCEC, EPCOR. Those water units could potentially cost us twice what we are billing right now. It's a hard reality, but water is really the new gold, and it's imperative that all of us and all of our residents understand that. Other communities, heard some comments in other communities, you're lucky you still have water to build. So that's where this conversation ultimately leads if we don't stay with it. On this, okay, I'll go to the slides now. So some of this, I'll blast through some of this repetitive information for you and note some of the differences. The last meaningful rate adjustment was in 2023. Essentially went 16 years with stagnant rates while that inflation increased. And not only that, but that inflation was compound inflation. So City of Portales bills about $250,000 per month. Average, the winter, it's closer to $220,000. In the summer months, it can peak at 300,000. Had that tracked, we would be billing $390,000 a month today. And so that is partially, we didn't fall behind in a single year, and we will not correct it in a single year. Next slide. That shows the compound rates on our rate plan, because I've heard it say many times, well, 3 years at 24% or 5 years at 40%. Actually, that's 3 years at 24.97 when you deal with compound rates. And by the time you get to 5 years, we're talking about almost a 47% increase on the plan that we are working on. Mr. Minton in the finance department and utility billing have identified a projected, next slide, a projected $3.91 million gap that has been slightly adjusted, but it's still very close. 1.89 million in the lower blue tab on the left, that's already happened. That's validated and verified. It happened from skipping the 2024 and 25 rate. What we are talking about correcting, or we are coming in at the green point, which is the $2.02 million projected gap in 26. Later, we can talk about slight adjustments and why they have been adjusted. And the other one is the 2027 anticipated $2.2 to $2.4 million gap, 2028, 2.4 to 2.7 over the 5-year period, estimated to be a 9 million or an 8.5 to 9 million dollar shortfall if we don't do anything. The most important part about this slide is we are kind of in the middle of this situation dollar-wise. And we definitely have the ability to act and reduce the 2026 impact and correct the 2027 and 28 impact and get back on track. Go ahead. We are in March 2026. I'm going to skip when I suggested implementing this in May, but that's not being a fiscally budgeted person, which I have been told other reasons why you may not want to do that. So I'll leave that to the professionals on that matter. But the time does reduce the effectiveness. If we had 8 months at even a 15% increase, we've got to realize that that's going to be diluted to a 10% impact because we're already into 2026. So honestly, the question is not just what percentage we choose, it's what level of action we want to take. And it's going to bring us to 3 realities. Moderate, low increases, they're going to stabilize the direction, but they are not going to close a large gap in 6 to 8 months. More aggressive is going to begin to reduce the gap, move the meter, but it's going to carry a tolerance risk, especially for fixed income. Delay is the most expensive because every month we wait, it increases the adjustment that's going to be required later. And the AKA, it's kicking the can down the road a little bit further than it's already been kicked. So, slide 4. Where our choices would be a stabilization approach that would slow the loss, and that would give us time to build a stronger 2027 model, possibly get this input from a third party to help us assess these rates. The next approach would be the recovery approach to reduce that gap in 2026. And the last one would be a catch-up approach, jumping towards those 5-year rates. And that's the only one that truly attempts to reconcile the missed years. It's mathematically sound, but it is politically, socially, and economically sensitive. So the real question is not which one works, but which one are we willing to live with? Next slide. This kind of gives a different rate impact, how much could be recovered by a straight across percentage, just for reference, not that we would initiate just a straight across price increase, especially if we chose to pick up the plan that is already in place. This is realistically just for the impact. Next slide. Which kind of shows if we increase the overall rates by 5, 10, 15%, we're going to close up to 30% of the gap. If we chose to go to the 20, 25, 30% range, we can make up to 72% of the gap. And the higher ranges, in order to fully close the gap, would require the actions in red. So next slide. To put something kind of in perspective, and I chose a higher tier water user, that way they would get some of those higher prices for upper gallons. But a water user using 10,000 gallons today, their bill would be about $69.71. That is considering just water, trash, sewer. There are test fees, conservation fees, wastewater treatment plant loan fees, and sales taxes on top of that that are not reflected here. But if by chance that entire rate was increased by 30%, that bill would go up almost $21 a month. If that bill was increased by 42% for those 3 utilities, it would go up $30 a month at that 42% range. So in practical terms, roughly $10 to $30 a month, depending on the level of correction. And that's what we're doing, weighing what it takes to stabilize the system against what our residents can reasonably absorb. There's no one in this room that wants to raise rates. So next slide. A lot of this was based on the city billing $610,000 a month, or 7.2 to 7.4 million per year. And that is comprised of 40% of that is water, 17% sewer, 18% trash, 20 to 25% other fees. Once that was discovered that some of those other fees are not something that we can raise the rates on, some of the numbers were adjusted. At that time, however, the co-op, the schools, the county.
That was the water co-op, the university, and the Portales schools.
Portales schools, they were not included in those initial analysis. So the analysis came in for those which are all level tiers. They're not escalated tiers. It brought the numbers back up to almost where this slide was. So the irrelevance of those other fees not being able to be increased kind of diminished. Next slide. And that kind of summarizes what I just said. So go ahead and go to the next slide.
Mr. Davidson, can I pause for just a moment?
Yes.
What happens with the contract that we just happened with the Roosevelt County Water Co-op? We would have to stay at that rate because we signed that for what was it, 5 years?
No, Ms. Cordova, in the water contract, we did sign the contract, we did sign a fee, but in the contract, it also says that the water co-op will adjust when we adjust. So if we go up, they
Okay,
go down, they go down.
perfect, thank you.
So implementing a correction soon would give us time to get these potentially third-party studies. And it would also give us time to measure the actual relationship between a percentage of increase versus revenue in real numbers, instead of sitting here with theoreticals and looks good on white paper and all that kind of things. We will know much more at the beginning of 2027 how a certain percentage impacts and gives us a certain revenue. And that way the 2027 plan could be more focused and kind of tighten us up a little bit. One thing that I brought up and I want to bring up again is residential electronic metering. The rounding errors in how we are billing are great enough that giving customers the ability to be billed for exactly what they use instead of plus or minus 1,000 gallons is a more fair system to the customer. And additionally, there's in some cases, the city is giving away large amounts of water by the way that we round off bills. So it's quite possible that we could pay for these electronic meters with more accurate billing. So it also would give the customer better visibility into their usage. As rates did go up, people could more accurately manage their own budgets. They might cut down on this amount of water or that amount of water, and early identification of leaks, line breaks, and things like that. Next slide. As I worked through these numbers, one result kept coming back, and I looked at it from multiple angles trying to prove Mr. Mitten wrong here. And it all came back to between the 5-year rate increase, which compounded at 47%, 16 years of inflation, which compounded at 56%, confirms something important is when all of these approaches, they all seem to focus on the fact that our system is underpriced by 40% or more. The next slide. So these actions, like I said, nobody really wants them. They may not be deemed as popular, but on the other side of the coin, this is something that if we do not act, that would be considered irresponsible. This team has identified the problem, and the question now becomes whether we take responsibility for fixing it. And if we do not act, and the problem is not going to stay where it is right now. It's going to grow. And eventually the state would step in and fix this, as they have done in other cities. But if we let that happen, the correction that we would be making voluntarily is still going to come. But they're going to come in and say, this is your new rate. It starts tomorrow. Problem fixed. And it's not going to allow us to deal with this having local control, or it's not going to give any ability for us to balance the impact of raising rates. For example, stretching it out just a little bit versus everything happening by tomorrow. So the point on the top, no action taken. We come out of executive council. This is one time that we do not want the words to be no action taken. We've got to do something about this. So at any rate.
Anybody need a break? We'll go to the Ms. Cordova, how are you doing?
We're doing great. Is there any questions from the committee on any of the slides that we were just presented?
Just
So-
writing them down.
My question would be, is if we immediately implemented the resolution that was passed in 2022 and brought the rates up immediately to where they are supposed to be, that resolution is already in place, so it would not require council approval. It can just be done, correct?
Correct.
And then the other side of that would be, so I mean, my opinion is we have no choice. That's what needs to be done immediately to stabilize. And if we did that, would that at least stabilize the problem while we figure out what to do with the retro that we need to make up for?
I love all of that.
And
Let's
are
talk about it.
and are you wanting, if we do that, what Chris is proposing, to just get it caught up tomorrow
To whatever.
To whatever-
It is right now.
to the rate now?
There you go.
Would you during that time frame, 2027 is about to start with July 1st, the fiscal year, correct? So we're almost done with 2026. Are you wanting to do a rate study from the company that you mentioned earlier to assess and see what are the gaps, or have a professional opinion to where it's not?
I love it. Yes, let's talk about it.
What's your plan?
I'm not shutting you down.
You're good.
We're starting to wrap this up. Are we, Mr. Stone?
Yeah, and I was just thinking along with what he said most of what I was thinking. We can recoup the gap over a period of time of 5 years or so and stop the leaking by increasing it to the rate it should be, rather than trying to get it real fast where it jumps up on people that are fixed income or lower income people. That was what I was thinking.
Okay, we're gonna talk about all those things in a couple of slides. We're gonna talk about a few things we already talked about, but this is what, are we ready to go? I'm ready to go.
Fired
All
up.
right, coffee's kicking in. Okay, stop the bleeding now.
Rock and roll.
Stop the bleeding now. Next slide. Why immediate action is required? About $150,000 a month is not being recovered. What is that? That's half of a trash truck. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about utilities. We're focused on water, but we're talking about utilities. Water, sewer, trash. $150,000 half a trash truck.
3 pickups.
3 pickups. That's 15 burned houses removed from the city. When we put it into things like that, right? Next slide. How we got to this point. We kind of talked about how we got to this point, but let's get down to the brass tacks, right in the weeds. Let's get way down there, the granular level. There's historical records. The clerk, she found them. There's historical records where there were some really smart people. Maybe they didn't have great personalities and people didn't like them so much, but they weren't necessarily wrong. There were directors who came to the city and said, hey, we're not making ends meet. We don't, sometime in the future, we're going to pay it. Pay me now, pay me later. People came to the city manager at the time, and they said, we are not going to be able to sustain this. I can't do the maintenance. Brought the data forward, and it was rejected at the city manager, city council level. This was years ago. But none of those people are here now. But they did. They brought it like we're bringing it now, saying it's non-sustainable. But it was rejected. And now we're dealing with it. Lots of data showing that. We know the names, we know the faces, most of them are gone, and things like that. But the problem is here. And the problem is directly correlated to the day or days when people came forward and said, look, I'm mapping this out. Costs X amount of money to run my directorate like this, and I don't have enough. So we got to make this adjustment. And they were told, no, not bringing it forward. Ta-da, somebody will deal with it later. Well, will somebody? Somebody else. Here we are. Next slide. Now, what I just said is true. It's not hyperbole. It's completely true. Understanding the gap. We talked about it, 2023, what happened in practice, forgot the bill, why it matters now. Why it matters now is because we're losing $1.8 million a year roughly. The numbers go back and forth, depends how you look at them. But the reality is the light is either on or off. We're either floating or we're sinking. It doesn't matter if I'm off by $10,000 or $20 or whatever. The fact of the matter is the ship is sinking. We're floating it by throwing strategic reserves at it, which are running out. We're floating it by throwing GRT at it, which is capped, and you can't go back that well again. The ship is sinking. Today is the day. Today is the day when all those people rejected the mandatory price increases back in the past that we're going to maintain and float the city, but not only float the city, make the city thrive. If my team had $150,000 extra dollars a month to work on things like wastewater treatment plant maintenance, road maintenance, trash truck maintenance, Portales would not look like Portales looks today. It would look the way Portales probably looked about just before this broke down. Better, different, smoother roads, things like that. It's a direct correlation of inaction. Let's move forward. Well, It's almost like I wrote these slides. Direct consequences of inaction. Next slide. About $2 million a year, roughly. That's a lot. That's a lot of Schlitz. How many knockdown houses moved down to the places? $1.8 million a year. That's almost 2 linear miles of avenue completely rebuilt down to 20 inches below the ground and built back up. That's almost 2 main avenues from one side of town to the other. Well, town's 6 miles, but that's 2 complete miles of avenue built almost. Completely reconstructed. Sewer, manhole covers, all of that. That's what it means. Next slide. We're gonna get to what we were talking about a second ago. Next slide. Propose sticking with what we have for the minute. Immediately enacting. Let me qualify immediately. We want to tell the people we have a problem. We want to tell them how we got here. We want to take the hit for it. But we've got to let everybody know this happened. We're gonna fix it. The reason you gotta let them know this happens, 1, for transparency, but 2, let them know that we're going to go back to, and this is the proposition, the proposal, go to exactly where we should be with the already pre-approved rates. Not anything extra, just go, where would we be compounded from 22 to 23, 23 to 24, 24 to 25, 25 to 26 to today. And enact that rate semi-immediately. The reason I say semi-immediately is we need to tell the people next month, yay verily, on May 1st, we're gonna start billing at this rate. And here's why. You gotta let them know so that they can slow down their water use and trash, well, trash is constant. But water use, etc., which directly correlated to their sewer use. But you have to give them the opportunity to adjust their lifestyle to these new rates.
So if you're saying that, I mean, the May 1st bill is gonna be water usage in April.
You understand what I'm saying? The rate's going to affect on May 1st.
Okay.
So that the
So
first
it'd be
time they
the
would see
June
the
bill.
effect of their bill would be on the June bill, but their water utilization would be billed on May 1st. Or June 1st or whatever we select. But I'm, as the city manager, operating at a $150,000 a month deficit right now that's pre-programmed by my predecessors. I'm vying for the immediacy being start the rate increase on May 1st. Then we will all collectively, including me, will start paying for that on June 1st. Okay. So what it does is immediately stops that bleeding. It immediately stops losing that $150,000 a month. It immediately stops losing that $1.8 million per month, etc. And it immediately starts to recover the finances that my team needs to do the things they need to do. We might be able to put the tail light back on the trash truck. We might be able to put the filter back in the wastewater treatment plant, those types of things without needing a grant to do so. It's ridiculous to have to go to people and ask for granted money because we're not billing the right amount of money that it costs to do the services. That's crazy. I'm asking for other people to make up for our own flaws. Is it legal, moral, and ethical? 100%. Has it been back tested before? 100%. Has it been taken to the US Supreme Court that municipalities can recover gaps in billing? 100%. Next slide. Next slide. What it does and doesn't do. Stops the bleeding, you heard me say it. It gets us to where we would have been today with just billing, but this plan starting immediately, letting the public know, mea culpa, however you want to look at it, and letting them know that this is coming, should have happened, we're sorry, etc., etc. But it starts with billing on May 1st. By June, we start to see a positive effect in turning the city around. This particular plan right here doesn't start to recover those losses. That's a different plan. This stops the bleeding. This is the motorcycle fell on the road. There's an injured motorcycle rider. This restores the airway, starts the breathing, stops the bleeding, etc. Treat for shock. Got it. That public opinion. Fixing it and rehabilitation, all that. That's plan B. That's not today. So what it does do, stops the bleeding. What it doesn't do is recover those funds that we have to recover moving forward. That's a different plan. It doesn't start with, and it does not wait on an independent rate study. That was done. It was done in 2022, voted in 2023. That part for this is done. To your question, next phase, independent rate study then? Yes. Do we listen to those folks who come in unbiased from the outside and go, this is what you need to do then? Yes. But now we enact what we already have.
May I ask one question?
You can ask two.
I am completely on board. My question from the other day, our meeting on Tuesday, I'm sorry, all this is running
Yes.
together, but on Tuesday, I think it was said that even if we had stayed on the rate and been doing it every year, it was
Yes.
still short.
It is.
So if I'm reading this right, if we're gonna stay with the ordinance, we're gonna stay with those percentage increases till this 5-year ordinance is over.
Not necessarily.
Or are we gonna repeal it or
What we're gonna do to your question, first off, does everybody understand the question? It said his understanding the other day was even these rates weren't enough. You're not wrong, that's correct. But these rates are voted in and they're already in a resolution.
Right.
These rates give us legal framework to do this now. So what we do is we do this now. Right? I'm in the ocean, I'm in a raft, the raft's doing good. I start hearing hissing air. Do I want to stop it? I want to stop as much as I can right now. I want to stop all of it, but if I can't stop all of it, I'm going to stop as much as I can. This resolution, this allows me to stop as much as we can. But getting this in place, making this happen now, it gives back that 150K a month, gives back that 1.8 million per year, and it allows me time to continue to float on that raft a little bit, even though I'm trying my best to do the independent rate study and get the right numbers in. And then that independent rate study, that gives us a strong legal framework to go forward when we make adjustments to do, one, some recovery, some gap recovery, but two, the right stuff from an outside engineer looking at our numbers going, this is actually what it takes, Portales. By the way, we looked at your infrastructure capital improvement plan. We know where you're going. We looked at all your data points. We know what your labor costs. We know what the tires cost. We know what the brake pads cost. All of those things are factored in. This is where your rates need to be. Now we have a defendable document so we can make the rates correct. And when someone says, who says, we say the professionals who do this day to day and make a career out of doing this and have legions of engineers, they said, this is what it takes. And by the way, it's compared across many, many other municipalities and you're on the right track.
Yeah.
But right now, this slows down that leaky raft, keeps us from sinking and gets us to where we can do that and get the right number in place. So you're not wrong. We're not making enough money through this. We're not getting to zero. We're still operating at a slight loss, but we're going to get to operate at a slight loss, not the huge loss.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
A question and a statement. Can we clarify? So we are in year 4, I believe.
Yes.
We're in the 4th year, the 4th month. Does that rate plan, let's say the 5th year, 2027, are we talking fiscal year or calendar year?
I'll be here from January 1st.
Okay, all right. Okay,
Yeah, that was enacted in January 1st, 2023. It would go through December 31st, 2028 or 7.
yeah,
It would end the first day before 28.
Yes.
okay. I just wanted to see when year 5 would start on that last year's rates, whether it would be July or January 1st, 2027.
My opinion on this,
Yeah.
no, what we're talking about right now is to stop the bleeding plan. I'm not talking about the future plan.
Okay.
So stop the bleeding is what I'm talking about today. Future plan, once we identify those numbers and an independent rate study says this is where you are, I would immediately bring that to council, notify the people, immediately bring it to council, make a decision. I would dissolve the previous resolution and move forward with another one, because we're still operating a loss.
And there would be advantages to doing even that adjusted rate study quickly to make sure that we are treating the co-op fairly and high users.
Any idea how long that rate study would take?
We have to put it out on the street and get a look if we can get a rate study in under $60,000. Now I'm talking finance stuff. If we can get a engineering firm, which they're out there, they do this, to do it for under $60,000, we can pull the trigger on it as fast as they can move. And so there are some theories like a month or two. Something like that.
And the other comment I wanted to make to Mr. Mitten's point about us holding out our hand to continually get help with grants and these things. Now some of those entities are telling us, no, you're not taking care of your finances, so we're not giving you any more money. So
We talked about that last week.
So dead horse. Okay, horse is dead. Next slide. Household level impact, these are approximates, but they're not far off. Next slide. Today, pulling the trigger today, getting to that adjusted rate. Scary words, we start talking about percentages and things like that. Based on what the billing department said, and based on the average utility rates, this would be about a $19 adjustment per month.
Now, is that for water, trash,
Yeah,
and
that's
sewer?
And that's how much your bill would change.
Yes, about. Yeah, now these are approximates.
Yeah, that's an average.
These are approximates. I use a little bit more.
plus that.
Now, that's right. So, you know, you have your dependent variables and your independent variables, et cetera. Taxes are a dependent variable. The more you use of the rate, the dependent variable of tax is gonna vary based on that. We know that. And the other thing too is that bill, these fluctuations, we're only raising the rates on the portion of the bill that is directly correlated to your usage or volume of that product or service. With except for trash you pay a flat fee, but on the water, you're paying for your water usage. You're not paying for loan repayment fees of the wastewater treatment plant and those kind of things that are factored in. Those aren't going up; those remain static.
Yeah.
The only things that go up or down are the volume utilization rates.
The enterprise funds.
Okay, so when we talk in scary, when we hear scary terms, and people are like, hey, it's 43%. What is 43%? Okay, in this case, we're not 43% with the aggregated thing, which would be 8, 8, and 8 compounded plus part of 8. We're about 25%, which is about $19 more across the board.
So is that $19 a month for a bill that, for a resident that uses the lowest tier water rate?
Is that your 10,000
It's
users?
based on billing, it is the average. of
6,000. 6,000.
So not
So it's an average of it, someone who uses less than 2,000 and someone who uses over
100%.
10,000.
It's the average of the person, the Sultan living in the castle over there, and the independent college student working on their graduate degree living in a trailer, you know, on the other side. It's the average, everything in between, right here. This is what this number is. But what it points out is it's representative of the dollar figure compared to the percentage figure. About that. Does that mean I'm gonna pay $19 more? No, I might pay 22 more. Okay. Next slide. Next slide. Horse is still dead.
Still dead.
Next slide.
We're kicking on him now.
Okay. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Next slide. Transparency is the biggest deal. We gotta clearly codify this problem. I think we've done that. I think we need to schedule time to talk to the public. I think maybe press releases are due and we're ready to go and get the right kind of thing shaped up. Let it be known that, hey, we identified a problem. That's what we were hired to do. People elected us. In many cases, in my case, they appointed me, hired me, appointed me, but in many cases, they elected you. As a non-governing body, as an advising body, you were appointed. We need to make the message, get it out to people. Mea culpa. I don't know if that's even applicable. Make it up. Mea culpa, but we have to get after it. Because if we don't, just like we're paying for the sins of our fathers, somebody will pay for what we did or didn't do in a later date, and it won't be a pretty picture. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Communicate clearly to the public, just cover that. Implement previously approved rates immediately or starting in May if possible. Commission an independent rate study at the same time to move forward and figure out what the real number is. And then institutionalize annual utility rate reviews. I don't think 5-year block periods of rate increases are a wise thing. I think if it's going to cost us about the same as a full-time employee, that we contract an independent rate monitoring, looking, adjusting, studying firm, that we pay them the $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year to look at all of our things considered. And part of our budget review and our budget proposal to city council going forward henceforth and forevermore will be to discuss the utilities and an outside independent company saying, well, we did this with Charlie Wilson Water Report, no, but they don't talk numbers as far as billing, they talk usage. Same thing as the Charlie Wilson report, we would be looking at utility rates and someone going, utility rates cost you this is what we're going to charge this.
So if we're doing this and I'm caught up to now, I'm talking about in the future. If we are doing this as part of our budget review and we do this, we have somebody study it and they say, hey, you need to raise them X amount for the coming year. That wouldn't necessarily even need a resolution, would it? I mean, that's just charging for your product. Do we have to have a resolution every time we do that? Or is that's just part of the day-to-day doing business to
Now,
me?
we're gonna ask that particular question to a couple agencies and
Okay.
give us some feedback, but I don't think you would. I think it would be right up front. Answering your question, I think it would be in the budget.
Yeah,
So the resolution to adopt the budget would
Automatically
be the
includes
resolution
that.
to adopt the rates.
yeah, I would agree.
That'd be a lot
Cleaner.
more seamless, yeah, a lot cleaner.
This team here and others helping them have done an amazing amount of research in the
Yes, sir.
last
Incredible.
few days.
All of it.
And what I'll tell you, one of the things we found is municipalities are getting away from with modern metering and instant feedback, et cetera. Municipalities are getting away from block rates,
Yeah,
i.e. 5-year rate
absolutely.
periods. They're going to year by year rates based on meter. And we already in the queue have our metering concept happening. It's happening, so
Yep.
we're going to get there. But so to stop the bleeding, let the people know, implement those rates that are already pre-approved. We don't really have to ask anybody. I mean, you know, would someone, I don't know, graffiti my house if I did it, but I don't have to ask anybody. I can make the rates happen tomorrow. Because it's already there. I would argue that before me, something happened and it should have been done and it wasn't. But we need to do that. And then we need to get that independent rate study moving forward. And I would argue we need to, get that going all the time.
Yep.
Moving forward once a year, just like the Charlie Wilson report, someone does the utility rates report, we factor that into our budget. And then we do annual reviews, which are part of the budget, and then we vote on it and we move forward. If it goes up a little bit, it goes up a little bit. If it goes down a little bit, it goes down a little bit. If people get mad at us because it goes up 2.8%. Well, we can all get a big circle and be mad at each other because guess what? It costs about 2.8% a year more for every single thing we do. Every styrofoam cup I buy, every party hat I buy, every pair of shoes I buy goes up about 2.8%. We can have a reasonable expectation that every drop of water, every pound of trash, and every bit of sewage water that we use as a service goes up in cost about 2.8% per year. And that's just the sad facts of being in the country we live in. That's the way it goes.
We felt that every week in the grocery line, watching a loaf of bread or gallon of milk, just every time you go in, it's higher price.
So my recommendation to the advisory body, I know you've been here for a minute, I know you have, but this is probably the most important thing any of us are gonna do for a long time as far as goes to city governors. My recommendation here is we pull the trigger, we let the people know there's a problem, and we immediately advise them that the rates that should have been going into effect, that we would have already lived, we would have already experienced, and we wouldn't even be talking about right now, because it would just be the way it is. We get to that point in time, we jump forward in time to today with the rates to stop that $150,000 month, $1.8 million a year.
Completely on board.
The way I'm looking at those bullet points is the first two you can do tomorrow if you want to. You have full authority to do that
Yep.
and does not require our recommendation or approval. Although I'm in 100% support of it. The other two, it looks like to me, are going to require council approval. Is that correct?
We just make a recommendation.
We make
to
a
move forward.
recommendation to the council to adopt the other two bullet points.
I'm in agreement with that.
I agree.
So
Wanna make that motion?
I would make the motion that this body is in full support of the city moving forward on the first two bullet points. And that we should recommend to the council to implement the second two bullet points on that slide.
Second.
Is there another?
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Wood and a second by, I believe, Mr. Rackler. Is that correct?
Rick.
Yes.
Okay, All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries to send that recommendation and implement to the council. One thing I just wanted to say is that I really do agree with the annual reviews. This will help us to remind us to implement what we already have in place. But there was one question that I did have above all of, after this is that, is there a way in our system, like within our software, to where we can put rates and start them at certain dates so that in the future this doesn't happen? Or do we have to automatically turn these on when it's time?
Can we schedule these increases so that this forgetting one doesn't happen again? I had that thought.
Correct.
I think I understand the question, and let me tell you what I think my recommendation will be. Right now, rates were designed back a couple years ago. Those rates were designed to be addressed in November and implemented on January 1st. That can work. My recommendation going forward will be that the rate adjustments will be dependent on the feedback from the outside agency looking at all things considered. The rate adjustments will be explained and brought forward in the budget proposal going forward to council. If the rate adjustments are accepted, then the rate adjustments will be advertised as soon as council voted on them, then the public would be notified and the rate adjustments would go into effect every July 1st. That way, any adjustments would be aligned with the budget. So it would go July 1st through June 30th. But everybody would know that the budget was accepted, the changes in the budget, and then rate adjustments, if required, go into effect every July 1st going forward. That will be my recommendation. Does that answer the question?
Yes, and that makes sense because then that doesn't put us in the bind that we are in now, because I was here on council when this went into place, but my assumption was that our software would just say on July 1st, these new rates start to be implemented, and it just automatically gets entered into our software system.
I like the plan, and it's very methodical, and I'd say well done to you and the team, and you got my full support. So
Yeah, I just want to make a statement. Eldon and Rustin and I that have been here a little over 2 years, we knew there were going to be hard decisions that had to be made. That's part of why we got on board. But part of that was find the right people to get us on the right track, and then we'll make those hard decisions. And I just want to applaud this entire staff. You guys have worked tirelessly on this to come to us today with what we have. My appreciation of y'all is immense. It's just incredible how hard you're working. And it makes it's not pleasant, but it makes it very easy to make a hard decision when you know you're making the right decision. And so I just kudos to the entire staff, top to bottom.
agreed.
Yep, that's a great statement, and I know it's echoed across the room, so thank you for that, Mr. Reckler.
So one other issue that I don't think we've addressed is the recoupment part. Do we need to make a recommendation to the council at this point on how we think they ought to address recoupment? Or
Wait on
is
that.
that something we need to schedule for another meeting?
Can you bring that slide deck back up? So in the what to do now, I would argue that at the towards the end, maybe last slide.
This one?
Next one. Up. So I would argue in the what to do now, that commission the independent rate study ASAP. I think by voting to do that is starting the recovery plan. Right there, or starting the recoupment plan.
I agree.
Because those rates, we will factor I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Well, I agree that's something that needs to be done, but you said we are legally obligated to recoup.
100%. So when we commission these folks, The things that we will give them as our tasks and variables are the things in the infrastructure capital improvement plan, all of our labor, the cost of doing business, et cetera, plus that financial gap,
Show them what we're short.
that gap from 20,
This is the estimated amount. We have
100%.
not collected.
We'll let them
the
crunch the
rest.
numbers. They'll have the 8%, the 8%, the 8%. They'll factor all that in. So their task as a scope of work will be to factor in that gap and the ICIP plan and all things in between, including labor and so on and so forth, to come up with the accurate rate. And when we have those things going forward from those folks, the product, that will be the true line by line tail of the tape. Someone says, what am I paying for? They can dig in and I got no idea how many lines it'll be, 100, 400, 600, I don't know. But they'll know incrementally they're paying for some of this. Am I paying for brake pads? 100% you're paying for brake pads, absolutely. Am I paying for a XM 325 filter? What is that? That's the giant filter that goes to the wastewater treatment plant. You're paying for that. We're all paying for that collectively because many of us here are in business and we know the cost of doing business, the cost of goods sold, the cost of goods services is not the one thing we're selling.
Right.
It's not the milk in the carton. It's the milk in the carton. It's the carton itself. It's the cap. It's the transportation of the thing. It's the little ink stamp that says the expiration date. All of those things have to be associated with them. It comes out of the cost of goods sold. And so to your question, not beating you down, not my point. My point is that gap will also be one of the things that they have to weigh to put. Yes, sir.
That hits on the current operating expenses, but recovering, like Chris said, the losses over the last 3 years, we're eventually going to have to get to address that. Do you need this committee to help with that? Like earlier I said, do we have to try to recoup it all in 1 year or can we just spread it out?
We're
On
gonna
top of
spread
our
it out.
increased
That's a great
rates
question.
with that.
So my recommendation to the outside agency is 3 courses of action based on time. You figure, I'm talking to you now as if you were the
Vendor.
the vendor, the contractor, the engineer. You figure out all the numbers, but I'm gonna give you 3 thresholds. Show me 1 year, show me 1.5 years, show me 2 years.
And then you can approach it because you have a number to work.
And that's gonna be my recommendation. I'm gonna tell you right up front. Give me a 1 year recovery plan, an 18-month recovery plan, and a 3 year or a 2 year recovery plan. I don't think we can afford to do a 3 year, 4 year, and a 5 year. There's some point when an extended period becomes almost parallax, where you just kind of don't get there. You will,
Yeah.
but it won't matter in the future. We don't know what's gonna happen. We've got things going on globally that are gonna affect us faster than those things would repair us.
And, just because we have a professional rate study doesn't mean the rates are always gonna be going up. If we get so many of these problems solved and we can attract new business or new businesses can expand, our GRT goes up, some of those, like the recovery, the trend line for recovery may be, slightly tilted where it could take longer, or we may not even need it if we, depending on our growth.
100%. Now we start to get into economy and scale, right?
Yeah.
So if more volume in retail goods is conducted in Portales, where more GRT is spread out, your actual GRT can shrink, right? So if the dollars flowing through GRT increase massively, then the percentage of GRT can go down, but you still increase the proceeds. Now we start to get into, economics and economy scale, et cetera.
Okay,
The important point is we're not telling the customer, the residents, we underbilled, your bill next month will have a $30,000 catch-up bill on it.
Yeah.
Spread that damage over time.
So, Mr. Minton, you feel like we've covered everything we need to cover today?
I believe we've covered everything we need to cover today. Going forward, the next phases will incorporate the question that you asked.
Great.
Mr. Stone, does that satisfy your question?
I have one odd
Yeah.
question, and it's mostly for perception, and if somebody asks this question, I'm just curious what the group thinks. I'm user X over here that's been wondering at 1 a.m. forever, and my argument to Councilman Rackler is, you're charging me more because I use more water. Why are you telling me when I can water? Does that make sense?
It does.
I mean, that's an argument. If I'm paying for the water and I'm willing to pay that higher rate for my water
I
because I want to water. How do we justify we're telling you we're going to charge you more if you use it, but you can't use it?
personal opinion here. Between the rates, the water sources, incoming water sources, we're working on a drought
Yeah.
contingency plan. I think all of those circumstances are dynamic, and I think they're all going to be changing as we go along. I think water rate increases are going to also increase conservation. That's how people are going to save on some bills. So we've got to be prepared to not just leave these resolutions, regulations, all that static because we don't want to mess with them. If we have to change these every few months, we have got to tune the system up and almost establish an automated path to where we really it runs itself. We really don't have to worry about so many of these things. But between point A and point B is going to take a lot of attention from administration and from public.
And I would answer that person as well, based on now your question is shifted from volume and funds to conservation theory and water theory. So we base our water restriction 2 alpha based on water theory and water conservation theory, whereas the water that you use in the evening is more sustainable for your lawn, assuming that's what you're using it for, and your trees, that it has a greater level of efficacy for your flora and fauna. Therefore, we keep less pressure on the aquifer if you do that. So that's our decision too.
And that also is a big factor on our storage capacity as well.
100%. Yeah. That's a good point too. Storage capacity is more storage at night than during the day. Things like that. So those are answered. Those are questions that will probably be answered asked. And those are answers that we will form currently at.
I'm good.
Good job, team.
Thank you, Scott.
Well done.
Okay, everyone.
V.
Okay, our motion has carried. Our next, if nobody has any other comments, then next item is item 4, which is adjournment. Thank you guys again for all your service and all the hard work from everybody that has placed into this. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.